First of all, thank you everybody for showing up and being here. I'm going to start, and this is going to be a bit more of a personal note on why I'm here, as I explored why have I been coming out, not for all 15, but week over week and the weeks that I'm in town, in the middle of a park in Bellevue. And it's a question that I ask myself, and it's a question that I've been asked by many of my friends and peers, both in the Israeli and Jewish community, but also in the local communities around me. What are we all doing here, Israelis and Jews representing and fighting for democracy in Israel? Why are we out here? Who are we protesting for? Who's listening and who's seeing us? And at times, I have to admit personally, it's felt weird. It's been a question that I haven't been able to answer strongly. How does this help? And what am I doing this for? At the end of the day, there's nobody around us really listening. There's nobody seeing it. We're not blocking any streets. Maybe a dog walker every now and then is questioning why the path is blocked. But there's a real reason. So, as I said, my name is Eran Megiddo. I was born in Israel. I was raised in Israel. I spent the better part of a decade in the Israeli army. I started my first two companies in Israel. And just over 21 years ago, I arrived in Seattle. And when I arrived in Seattle, like many of the Israelis here, probably, projecting, I thought I'd come here for a year or two and probably make my way back to Israel. Okay, I was right. Make my way back to Seattle, or back to Israel. To prove how serious we were, my wife and I not only bought temporary furniture, but all the electronics that we bought was 110, 220, because we knew we'd need to bring it back home. So while I was raised in Israel, I've been living in Seattle for over 20 years. And I say living in Seattle, I don't say my home has been in Seattle. Because for all those years, without a doubt, home is still Israel. And that's a bond that's hard to explain. That again, I think for many of us, whether you were born there or you were Jewish and lived your entire life here, or like our oldest daughter, Yael, who was born here in Washington, D.C., grew up her entire life here in Seattle, and yet after 18 years of the American school system, after being accepted to colleges, chose to volunteer and go back to the Israeli army, and chose to make Israel her home because that's what felt home for her. Israel is and remains home for me. It's a bond that's hard to explain. It's a bond that's stronger than many bonds out there. It definitely has nothing to do with the annual trips back to Israel, which unfortunately for many of us are in the summer, because the sticky, hot, humid parking lot of Tel Aviv isn't what draws us back every year. It can't be. But there's something underlying it, and something that makes Israel home. And when your home is under attack, what anybody would do is defend it. When your family is under attack, when your loved ones are under attack, what anybody would do is defend it. So when I stop and ask, what are we doing here? Why am I here in a park in Bellevue? I know that it comes from a place of defending my home, of defending Israel. I said I was born and raised in Israel, but in reality, I was born in Israel and raised in Israel and Germany and Holland and the United States. My father was an Israeli diplomat. He represented Israel as an ambassador to many countries over the course of a 40-year career. And I grew up watching him represent and defend Israel. An Israel led by governments starting with Golda Meir, who he worked for, through Begin. Governments led by Peres and then Bibi. Governments led by all different sides. He worked for Sharon, Arik Sharon, and he worked representing him as well. And it was always fascinating to watch what he drew his confidence from, and what he drew the steadfast belief that representing Israel and defending Israel abroad was both crucial, but also can be done with integrity no matter what political beliefs and opinions he was representing. And we often talked about it. And underlying his steadfast defense of Israel were two underlying beliefs. He was definitely on the left side of the political agenda. But regardless, he knew that no matter which country he was in and whomever he was talking and whichever government was back home, he knew that a strong Israel was existential for the lives of Jews and Israelis, not just in Israel, but around the world. And he knew that there were two pillars that underlined that strength. The first one was Israel being a homeland for the Jews, because we all know the history when we did not have a homeland, and we all know the perils and the dangers existential to us as a people. So Israel had to be a strong homeland for Jews. That was underlying pillar number one. And that gave him legitimacy wherever he talked. Everybody understood that. Everybody, or most everybody, knew that internationally. And the second pillar was the fact that no matter what the voices were in Israel, Israel was a democracy, the only one in the Middle East. And by virtue of having many voices, that is core and the essence of the democracy. And it's okay, and it is necessary, and it gives the legitimacy for the democratic countries that we were at abroad and representing abroad to support the country back home. We are all too familiar with defending Israel from our enemies. We've had wars and terrorist attacks and many around us that would like nothing else but to wipe us off the face of the earth. What we aren't familiar with is defending ourselves from within. And history will tell you that defending yourself from within is always the most existential threat and dangerous threat that you can have. The two pillars that my father drew on are being attacked. In order to be a homeland for the Jews, in order to be what is essentially an exclusionary statement at its heart, a homeland for the Jews, it doesn't say anybody else. We know that that only has authenticity and integrity and strength if we have an inclusionary society and value. We know what happens when one is excluded. And we know that while we call it the homeland for the Jews, my father knew it was always a homeland for everybody that was there, all walks of life, all beliefs, all political beliefs, all spectrums. And it is currently under attack by this current government. It is an exclusionary government that is marginalizing and pushing out not just voices, but belief systems and religions and people of all walks of life. That pillar is being eroded from within. And we know that in order to be a democratic country and have that legitimacy, different voices need to be heard, and all voices can be represented. And this government is attacking the pillars of democracy from within and weakening the integrity of the second pillar that for my father was steadfast for all those years. If those two pillars fall, there isn't a lot of legitimacy for the country of Israel. If those two pillars fall, I worry not just about Israel, but I worry about all of us. In the arc of history, if they fall, Israel will last today, it will last out tomorrow, but sooner than later, once we've done what we've done from within, the enemies from outside will see the weakness, whether in Israel or all of us around the world. The support that we get today will crumble, and the anti-Semitic feelings that are around us, the anti-Israel feelings that are around us, will raise. And over the arc of time, my concern is not just for our homeland. My concern is for the safety of all of us, everywhere, whether Jews or Israelis, anywhere in the world. So when I go back and think about why am I here, why is speaking here in front of you in Bellevue and Seattle necessary? Why am I doing it? I think I'm doing it for the same reason people all over the world are doing it, because we feel the existential threat, because we know there is no choice other than to defend your family, defend your friends, and defend your home. And for whatever inexplicable bond it is, for me, Israel is my home. Thank you.